Wow, it's breathtaking to see this side of Afghanistan this way, despite of all the challenges and hardship of the people in Afghanistan. It's absolutely amazing. It's a beautiful country with amazing people and strong moments of joy. Before we start, I want to introduce myself to you guys. My name is Nazila Ayub. I'm one of the staff member of Women for Afghan Women for more than 12 years. I started working as a volunteer in this beautiful organization, and I am a proud member of the organization for several years. Before we move on to our panel, please let me introduce WA to you guys and tell you guys about WA a little bit. Women for Afghan Women, or we call ourselves WA. We were founded 20 years ago. Women for Afghan Women WA is a grassroots civil society organization led by Afghan women and dedicated to protecting and promoting the rights of disfranchised Afghan women and girls, both in New York and in Afghanistan. In particular, WA works to help Afghan women and girls exercise their rights to pursue their individual potential, to self-determination, and to representation in all areas of life, whether it is political, social, cultural, and economic, and relentlessly advocates for women's rights and challenges the norms that underpins gender-based violence to influence attitudes and bring about some change. WA is the largest women's and children's rights and direct service organization in Afghanistan. To date, WA has provided nearly 1.1 million internally displaced people and refugee returnees with protection, monitoring, education, skill buildings, and survivor services. We have trained more than 450,000 individuals on women's rights and more than 40,000 Afghan refugees on peace building and women's roles in peace building. We have also helped more than 65,000 women and children, and we are a family. Let me thank you guys again for joining us today as we recognize and celebrate International Women's Day 2021 and the theme Women in Leadership, achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world. As we all know, COVID-19 has impacted a lot of us, businesses, organizations, workers, everybody is affected by COVID-19. So our discussion will continue on that. During this discussion, we are particularly focused on the challenges and achievements and the stories of Afghan women. We have an extraordinary a panel of women's rights activists that we are fortunate enough to have them here with us on the panel today. And we are going to start our conversation with Nadia Hashimi, the Executive Director of Women for Afghan Women. Nadia, who, as I said, is the Executive Director of WA, has over 19 years of experience in nonprofit realm, with a focus on civil rights, women's empowerment, and international development. And in her former capacity as WA's Afghanistan Country Director, Nadia built strong relations with government officials, international donors, and the public sector, civil society, and influential local elders and religious leaders. She successfully led a massive program and staff expansion, as well as honed the vision, strategic direction, programmatic development, financial management, and infrastructure growth of war in Afghanistan. Nadia was nominated for 10 Bravest Women of the World Award in 2014 by Amnesty International and the 2015 Václav Havel Human Rights Prize. And in 2018, she won the Mother Teresa Memorial Award for Social Justice on WAS's behalf. Bravo, Nadia John. Nadia John, we are looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Nazila John. It's a great pleasure and a distinct honor to join you and other esteemed panelists to celebrate international women's rights in Afghanistan and around the world. Joining this amazing gathering today from Kabul, I especially would like to thank hundreds of my brave colleagues, both men and women, who have dedicated their professional and personal lives to promoting and protecting the rights of women in one of the most dangerous countries in the world. These unassuming yet resolute and strong teamwork around the clock to make sure our vulnerable clients were often disowned by their families and have survived gender-based violence can find a safe place where they can seek shelter and find adequate resources that allows them to seek justice and build their future lives. Because of the incredible leadership of my colleagues, the women of Afghanistan today know that they are not alone, and their personal and collective struggle for justice and equal right will not be ignored. The past 12 months have been difficult for many people, especially those who had to live through the pandemic in a country with very limited medical and financial resources. I especially would like to acknowledge many of my colleagues who agreed to take week-long shifts to prevent the spread of virus at the centers and protect our clients. Many of my colleagues fell sick to COVID-19, and one of my colleagues, a mother of two, lost or struggled to the pandemic. But despite all the heartbreaks and suffering, we kept our centers across the country open and we never closed down and continued to provide services to anyone who needed help at that crisis. Even at that time, when many government agencies were closed their doors and work remotely, we never stopped our essential services to those marginalized people who had no other places to go. This is what I consider to be real leadership, and the credit goes to every one of my colleagues who understood the importance of their job and decided to risk their health and give up their personal comfort to protect survivors of gender-based violence. The pandemic is not the only thing in our mind. In the past few months, there has been daily targeted assassinations of activists and human rights defenders, including outspoken women rights figures. Every day, we witness these senseless killings of innocent civilians whose only crime is to speak out against injustice. Many of my colleagues have also received death threats for their advocacy work on behalf of Afghan women. Last, um, Last month, there was an unsuccessful assassination attempt against one of our colleagues who works at one of our provincial shelters. These threats are real and has caused a great deal of anxiety within Afghan society. Yet, despite all these threats and acts of violence, my courageous colleagues continue to work for women's rights and for creating a better tomorrow for all girls and women in Afghanistan. To me, they are the real leaders of the movement. the real heroes. And I want to thank each and every one of them from the bottom of my heart on this special day. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia John. It was great to hear from you. I have some follow-up questions from you. What were 2020 COVID-19 achievement and challenges during the pandemic for your staff?
Thank you, Nazila John. I would start basically with the challenges first. So similar to all other countries, Afghanistan wasn't prepared for this pandemic at all. And in addition to that, Afghanistan did not have the resources available to respond at a timely manner and an effective manner to this crisis. And our organization, Women for Afghan Women organization, that we provide 24-hour services to our clients, the challenge was even more. Because of the limited resources within the market to take the basic precaution measures. By limited resources, I mean the face masks, the hand sanitizers, and also overall the limited medical services for the people in Afghanistan. And when it comes to our offices, we had to deal and work in a situation where on one hand, we had to make sure that our offices are open and our staff come regularly. On the other hand, we had to make sure that we take all those precaution measures to avoid the spread of virus, and so that our clients are safe and also our staff. We had to work with our staff on office space arrangements, on clients' rooms, on food menu, on staff schedule arrangements, and also awareness of our clients and staff on how to make sure to reduce the spread of virus as much as possible. Especially in a country with limited resources. So these were the major challenges that we had, and especially during the lockdown, we had to make sure that our staff, there are transport available for our staff, that they could come to offices when there was quite restrictions that in the usage of transport within the city. So despite all these challenges that I just mentioned, we were very successful to manage this crisis in its best possible way. Our operations were never closed. We responded to all our clients. We provided those services to our clients, and our staff were the front as line workers who managed to be away from home for 2-3 weeks. In Afghanistan, making this type of decision, especially for a woman, it is very difficult to be away from their families at that time of crisis, to be away from their children and stay in the center for 2 weeks at least, so that reduce the spread of virus and spread of virus within within our centers. But fortunately, we could overcome all those challenges, and we could have like limited number of staff who were infected with COVID-19, and a very few clients who were infected with COVID-19. And I'm proud to say that that was the commitment of our staff, and also the management of excellent and committed staff that we have in provinces, and also in within the Kabul, the capital. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Nadia John. It was very informative, and we are very thankful that you are there on the front line with women and children who are in need. Thank you so much. So now thank you. Now I'm pleased to introduce you to Nadia Hashimi, Dr. Nadia Hashimi. Dr. Nadia Hashimi is a pediatrician, former congressional candidate, and internationally best-selling novelist with books for adults and children, with translation in 16 languages. She is the founding member of Afghan American Foundation and serves on the U.S. Afghan Women's Council and the Montgomery County Health Commission in Maryland. She is also a board member of the two other organizations working on empowering girls and educating children in Afghanistan. While born in the U.S., Hashimi has stated that the Afghan culture has always been a part of my life. Dr. Hashimi, can you please tell us about your immediate attention towards the Afghan women and children?
Sure, absolutely. And thanks so much for getting us together for such a worthy cause. And hopefully we can continue to lift the voices of Afghan women. In the work that I do at this stage now, I've really become not just an advocate, but a storyteller. And I really hope that my work will help elevate the stories of Afghan women. And I believe this is important for a few reasons. In my lifetime, I have seen the story of Afghan women been told truly by a handful of images. In the 1980s, we had Sharbat Gul's Green Eyes, which became world famous when her picture was taken in a refugee camp and when she graced the cover of the National Geographic magazine. And one Halloween in New York City during the infamous Halloween parade, I spotted a woman who was wearing a red scarf and draped around her head and holding a yellow cardboard cutout frame in her hands. And there she was, dressed up as the face of this Afghan woman. During the years of the Taliban, there were two images that seem to represent the status of Afghan women. And when I'm speaking with this group here, you may recall them. One was a picture of a bearded man who was raising a whip to a woman who was crouched on the street, completely covered in a blue chadari or burqa. And the second was even more brutal. It was a picture of a woman who was kneeling in the stadium with a rifle to the back of her head, awaiting her execution. And that seemed to be it. That seemed to be the entire catalog of images. And I remember always feeling like, where is the rest of the story? Where are all the moments in between? Where are all the lives that exist beyond those moments? And so when I started writing, the world still had a very simplistic understanding of what it meant to be an Afghan woman. What did an Afghan woman look like? I remember one day getting coffee somewhere and someone asked me where I was from. And when I said my family's from Afghanistan, he said, you don't look Afghan. And I said, well, what does an Afghan woman look like? There really was very little context for the earlier part of my life. And when I speak with readers around the world, there is a very limited understanding about what's happening in Afghanistan today. And that's where the narrative can become very enriching and very encouraging. So I'm lucky that I get to talk to people about Afghan women's lives and the history of the country, and specifically about what's going on today, because today's Afghanistan will actually surprise people and the images are quite inspiring. So it's quite gratifying. But we need to continue to change that narrative beyond the groups that I'm talking to, beyond the people that each of us are interacting with. And we can do that by telling these stories in a few different ways. One is visually. I can tell you that if you Google Afghan women over the years, it's gotten better, but still the images that are accessible, that are available to people are fairly bleak. Now, I work with a colleague of mine. We run a social media campaign with the hashtag Afghan Women Strong, where we literally put up pictures of women who are doing incredible or ordinary things, but they're Afghan women doing these things to completely change the visual perspective. And so we showcase entrepreneurs and politicians and artists. Now, the second way that we change the narrative is through storytelling. Now, in a time when Afghan women's have been forgotten from the world's consciousness and priorities, it feels truly vital, either as an act of protest or desperation, to center them in storytelling. And we can do this to ensure that their struggles are recorded in the sacred spaces of journalism or in literature. And the truth is that the Afghan women cannot be told in one single story or even in a dozen. So I'm very thrilled to see that we've got now so many people writing, so many Afghan women writing novels, memoirs, and articles to tell their own stories and their diverse truths. And that's why I love writing stories that include Afghan women as characters. And my characters in my books have been journalists, politicians, mothers, saviors, royalty, students, artists, survivors, physicians, and more, because that is what's happening. The truth about Afghan women needs to be told, or the world is operating with an invalid calculus. When we ask the world to persist beyond the Afghan fatigue that we know they're experiencing, they need to know what Afghan women have accomplished in the past 2 decades. And when we ask the world to stand with Afghan women, they deserve to know that they are standing with equals.
Wow, very powerful comments. Thank you so much, Nadia John. I have a few questions for you. As a novelist, how do your stories get to the truth of Afghan women's lives?
So I think that, what we can look at is how have we been delivering, or how have we been delivered to us the stories and the truths of Afghan women's lives. In the past couple of decades, really, it's been in sound bites, it's been in headlines, it's been in these rare photographs and in very bleak statistics. But we can really take a deeper dive, and that's, we have many, many different ways of being able to do things. I would say that what my role is giving people a chance to take a deeper dive into the story of a single Afghan woman. And I know that these are fictional characters, but what happens in the world of reading, it's pretty magical, is that a reader ends up really falling for the character and falling for what's happening in that person's life. And so they get to see not only this individual as a two-dimensional, but it's as three-dimensional person. They care about what's going to happen to this individual, and they care about what winds are blowing that's changing the trajectory of this individual's life. So again, it just adds to the diversity of information that is available to people to see Afghan women as true individuals that are full three-dimensional people and worthy of our care and concern.
Do you think that one day your novel is going to become a movie for people to watch?
Well, my novels start off as a movie in my head.
Okay.
And that's how they play out for me. That's how I end up recording them and tracing them along. If they will or will not become a movie, that I could not say, but I am lucky that they're being read.
I wish one day we can have it in the movie theaters for our children to watch. Thank you. So as a very active member of Afghan community, bringing attention to the issues of justice and equality for all, what has been the response of the communities, particularly men, in protecting women's rights?
Now, that's a great question. I think this is also another space from which we can derive a lot of hope that the task before us of ensuring Afghan women's rights and equality is doable and attainable. I can tell you that in my work, what I've been able to do with the support and the encouragement of the Afghan men in my life, from my grandfather to my father to my husband to my brother to all of my many, many uncles, right? to my father's friends. The events that we've been able to put together and the asks that I have made of them, they have shown up, and they have shown up with a smile on their face. I remember when I was more involved on the political front that someone had been helping me, an Afghan gentleman, of my parents' generation. And he said, I'm so proud of you because you and other women, you're doing the work that we're supposed to be doing. And I laughed. I told him, no, we're doing the work we're supposed to be doing. And he had a moment, he laughed as well. And he was such a kind-hearted person. And he recognized that, yes, you know, we both can be sharing in this burden of speaking up for our communities, of speaking up for the women in our community. So I think that understanding that the partnership is critical, and understanding that we do have allies. It's, you know, again, the men of Afghanistan, Afghan men who are even the diaspora abroad, they are our partners, they can be our allies. And that is a critical thing for us to have going forward, teaching our sons to also become allies. And it is there. So all we need to do is grow it, nurture it, and expand upon it.
Thank you so much. You have done a great job so far, and I'm pretty sure that you're going to continue doing wonderful job that you're doing. Thank you, Nadia Jan.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure now to introduce you to Ms. Ahmadi. Bilqis Ahmadi is a human rights lawyer with over 20 years of experience working on issues related to rule of law, civil society development, governance, democracy, countering violent extremism, and peace building. Ms. Ahmadi has provided senior level policy advice and representation on complex governance, electoral, and access to justice initiatives. She processes board knowledge of political and development properties, and has worked on development projects in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Pakistan, and the Middle East. At the United States Institute of Peace, where she works as a senior program officer, Bilqis is focused on promoting rule of law, women's access to justice, and women's participation in the peace process. Ms. Ahmadi published writing includes research and analytical pieces on countering extremism, elections, access to justice, and women's political participation. Ms. Ahmadi, we are very lucky to have you with us. We want to hear from you now.
Great. Good afternoon to all. Thank you, Nazila and WA colleagues for convening this really important and timely event. I would like to begin by the fact that it has been a deadly week for Afghanistan, and particularly for Afghan women. Today, a female doctor was gunned down in Jalalabad city, in the heart of the city, and 2 days ago, 3 young women journalists were assassinated in the same city. So it has been a very difficult, challenging time in Afghanistan for women. And these women's crime, being educated, professional, while being women, that were their crimes. As we commemorate Women's History Month, we are reminded of the hardship and challenges millions of women and girls face on a daily basis. We are also reminded of women's resilience in Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, Burma, Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, and many other places. While you mentioned the challenges during COVID era, while we are all focused on the immediate impact of COVID pandemic and its devastating consequences and long-term ramifications in conflict zones or conflict-ridden countries, we need to keep in mind that less development countries and poor nations continue to be used in proxy wars by regional as well as global powers to aggressive and destructive interventions. And unfortunately, the most affected by these actions remain to be women. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have for me, Nazila.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Ahmadi. You have been working on women's rights issues for many years. Could you tell us what is your take on the status of women's rights as we commemorate Women's History Month?
Sure. So there has been, as I said, women continue to face challenges everywhere. There has been some initiatives, or a lot of initiatives and progress, initiatives taken and progress made, but overall, women remain to be treated as, unfortunately, as second-class citizens by many in different corners of the world. There still needs to be a lot of work done in order to reverse the impact of the discriminatory behavior against women all over the world.
All right. Thank you very much. There has been a progress in women's lives. Actually, my question has two parts, if you may. So there has been a progress in women's lives. What are some of the progress that you think have improved women's situation, and how do you assess women's situation in Afghanistan, and what needs to be done to protect women's gains in the peace process?
Great. So this was the first set of your questions. You said there are two questions. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'll go with this one first. Thank you so much. This is a really good question. If speaking in general terms, I think on the one hand, there has been remarkable progress in recognizing the fundamental rights of people, particularly women and girls, by world leaders, members of the United Nations, in the form of resolutions, conventions, and statements, and strategies, and so on. So these are all good things that has happened. But then on the other hand, the same leaders who loudly and forcefully declare these tributes and recognition, too often turn a blind eye and fail to take concrete actions to protect and promote women's rights. The vulnerability of women and girls, especially in times of conflict, are oftentimes ignored by domestic leaders as well as other actors in the international community. Women are the most affected, and they are deprived of some of their basic rights. If we look everywhere, some of the countries that I just mentioned, these include the right to life, liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, and freedom of expression, and so on. The list goes on and on. If we go back to the situation in Afghanistan, I was listening to Ms. Nadia Hashimi very carefully about the type of services that WAR, of which I'm a proud member of the WAR family as well, has been doing to improve women's situation and girls' situation everywhere in Afghanistan.
Okay, thank you so much. And it was very nice to talk to you, Bilqis John. The second part of my question was for you, what is your opinion with the progress of the women in Afghanistan? What is your opinion nowadays, if you may?
Sure. I'm being asked this question, as well as many other Afghans, by some of our friends in the international community. I would like to bring everyone's attention to the situation of women 21 years ago in Afghanistan, where state-imposed dress code was imposed on women everywhere, where girls were disallowed to go to school, and women were discriminated against and had very little access to services such as education, employment, and health, and so on. So keep that in mind. That's 21 years ago. And the progress made so far in Afghanistan is remarkable. That has been made by support from international community, especially the US government and American people. But it also has been made possible with the resilience and hard-working Afghan women, civil society, and Afghans in general. Today, there are laws that protect women. Unlike 21 years ago, there were laws to discriminate against women. There are institutions put in place there are mechanisms to protect and support women's rights. So when I mention all of that, I don't want to paint a false, rosy picture that everything is perfect and good for Afghan women. That's not the case. There are shortcomings in the laws, policies, institutions that have been put in place. But the reality is that the gains that Afghan women and youth have made in the past 20 years are remarkable. But the sad part is that they are still fragile. And these gains and these sacrifices can go away. The gains that have been gained by many, many sacrifices, they can be easily eroded. Especially on the issue of peace in Afghanistan. So we all know the peace process in Afghanistan has gained momentum in 2019. It has had a bumpy road so far. At the start of the process, it created a lot of hopes for peace and stability in Afghanistan after more than 4 decades of war. Despite the agreement between the US and the Taliban that was signed last year in February, unfortunately, Afghanistan remains a country where more people are being killed as a result of fighting than any other country in the world. Violent and deadly attacks by the Taliban, particularly, and ISIS has claimed the lives of thousands of civilians. That's after the beginning, after the start of the peace process. I would like to bring attention of your audience to the fact that targeted and indiscriminate attacks by Taliban and ISIS have rocked cities, towns, and villages, taking lives and damaging the already weak economy that we all internationally and those in Afghanistan has worked so hard. So while there is still hope that the peace process will succeed, unfortunately, Afghan people's call for a ceasefire has been flatly and repeatedly rejected by the Taliban. And that has crushed people's high hopes for peace and stability in Afghanistan. I'll stop here if there are any specific questions regarding women's participation in the peace process. But that's my general view on what's going on in Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ahmadi. We are very lucky to have you, and we learned a lot. Your information are valuable for us. Thank you so much, Ms. Ahmadi, for being with us. I'm going to go back to Nadia John, our Executive Director of Women for Afghan Women. We had a little bit of internet issue. We are going to go back to Nadia John right now. Nadia John, I have a question about the COVID-19. COVID-19 impacted a lot of people in different ways. What is how did your program change because of the COVID-19? And what was the immediate impact of the COVID-19 during the lockdown for women?
Thank you, Nazila Jan. I hope you can hear me well. Like this internet issue is a big problem in Afghanistan. So in terms of like how we had to bring and change our services, the type of or being more creative, Normally, when we listen to a number of organizations, easily they can say that, okay, we change our work to somehow to online, to virtual, providing services through other means of communications. So when it comes to the nature of the operations of war, and especially being in Afghanistan, where the power is like in 24 hours, like we have 6 or 7 hours of electricity within our houses. And at the same time, the other internet issues and the nature of our work, that this is direct services with the clients. So coming to a strategy to make sure that the clients respond to the client's needs, but we developed like a comprehensive protocol, and that protocol not only responded to all precaution measures that our staff and clients should take, starting from developing different forms. When a client registers, what questions should be asked, and quarantine room for at least 2 weeks for those clients, the distance, and also the when the mediation basically takes place within the families. Normally, when mediation takes place, we have more number of families that they sit around the table. It's more like gathering of 10 to 20 and sometimes 30 people. We had to reduce these numbers and make sure those distance are respected. And in terms of like our training programs, awareness programs, normally instead of having a session of 25 to 40 of community people, we increased the number of the session and decreased the number of participants, and also provided the community with a COVID-19 kit that included face mask or an sanitizer for the community. And at the beginning, when there were limited resources of and availability of a face mask within the market, so basically we could teach our staff and also clients in sewing face masks, and that not only responded to the needs of our clients and our centers and the visitors, but also we could even use it as a source of income for our clients. So that it's kind of like coming to different strategies to make sure that the services are open for the clients. It was not easy, especially that our centers, in terms of like the space, the rooms, and also all those resources, it wasn't easy, but we could manage with being creative and offering different type of through different type of strategies and also ways to combat to those basically problems. In terms of the second question that you asked about the impact of COVID-19 and especially the lockdown on women, this is quite, there was significant impact on women during the lockdown. On one hand, there was like insecurity in Afghanistan all around the country. Then when it comes to the lockdown, the number of cases of gender-based violence increased due to the lockdown. Because normally due to lack of the transportation, women could not have access to women protection centers or to government entities, and being at home with their family members, particularly if the abusers or they are being more abused during those time. And of course, when unemployment rate increases so much, and poverty is also one of the reasons that increases gender-based violence. So that also impacted women to be more victim of these problems inside the houses, and taking care of the children because the schools were off, so the children were at home. So this also created a kind of tension for the woman inside the houses, lack of access to medical services, and even those clients that they were with us because the legal entities and the government offices were working on a schedule, some of the government offices. So it took like a very longer time until those cases were processed within government entities. So the impact was quite significant. And in addition to that, of course, the insecurity which is going on right now. I just want to give a few remarks on how it is impacted in terms of gender-based violence, increase in the number of forced marriages, increase in the number of child marriages, and also increase in the number of women who have to stop to work because of the insecurity, and also the schools when they don't operate in the provinces and the remote areas. So the impact was quite significant. But last, I would like to thank our colleagues and also the friends of WA and the donors who could timely support WA, that we could overcome all those financial resources, particularly to respond to these challenges that women were facing during COVID-19. I hope I answered your questions. Thank you, Nadia Jan.
Thank you, Nadia Jan. One more question. What was the reaction of your clients towards the protocols that you put in place? As you told us that you added more forms to be filled out, and precautions, social distancing, and all that. What was the client's reaction to that?
The COVID-19 itself actually brought a fear among the whole people, and among the clients, among the staff, the psychological impact. So, and when you're stressing so much, like washing hands on frequently, wearing a face mask, or using hand sanitizer. Even using hand sanitizer was actually new for some of the clients. So the reaction, it wasn't an easy to convince clients, especially at the beginning. There was different rumors going on in Afghanistan for this COVID-19. So the reaction at the beginning, it was quite difficult for clients to stay in a room isolated from the others, for the new clients to be in the room for 14 days. So it was difficult, but due to our expertise and our staff, we could convince them, and our staff was quite patient, that our clients was responsive to that. Then later, at the beginning, it was difficult, but later, due to awareness, they follow all those protocols that we set up.
Thank you so much, Nadia Jan, for all your insight from Afghanistan. I know that it is very difficult to deal with situations like this in a country like Afghanistan, but Afghanistan is in progress by the people like yourself. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody who joined us today for having this panel. I especially want to thank Ms. Bilqis Ahmadi and Ms. Nadia Hashimi for being with us here, and of course Nadia Jan, our country director in Afghanistan, all the way from Afghanistan. I know it is very difficult with the internet issues and the electricity and all that, and thank you all for the time that you put here for us. I wish everybody a happy and healthy International Women's Day. I hope you have a good time, and I hope you stay safe and healthy. Have a good day, guys. Thank you.